Good morning, everybody. My name is Kaliash Narayanan. I'm based out of Santa Rosa in California. I lead the wireless test business for Keysight. And right now, wireless is all about 5G, so I also lead the 5G program for Keysight Technologies. Really honored to be here today and in front of all of you to speak about how we see the industry, the state of the 5G industry today, and how Keysight has enabled this industry and how we're going to continue to do so as 5G rolls out. And we also will talk specifically about some technical challenges that the industry still has to overcome and our role in enabling that. Okay. So there are many different data points about 5G. I'm sure you all have been exposed to slides like this, but it's suffice it to say that 5G is a revolutionary technology. It will change the way that we live and do things in the future. But what's different about 5G is it's not just about connectivity services to individuals. It's really connectivity services with guaranteed performance based on dedicated service level agreements that help multiple vertical industries. So if you think about 1G, that was all about voice, mobile voice. If you think about 2G, we added text and a little bit of data, SMS messages. You think about 3G, we added more data so we could do email on the phone. You think about 4G, you had all of the mobile e-commerce, web access, and social networking. You think about 5G, it's really about quality of service and quality of experience for consumers as well as businesses. So 5G is probably the first generation of technology that is B2C, that enables a lot of B2C applications, business to consumer applications, but also B2B, business to business applications. This is why mobile operators are very excited about accelerating the deployment of 5G. So we conducted a survey, Keysight conducted a survey a few months ago, polling all of the key players in the wireless industry. And we found out that everybody was investing in 5G, but more than half of the people that were polled, the companies that were polled, indicated they invested in 5G very aggressively to secure first market position. And that's very challenging, right? When you're trying to invest aggressively in a new technology, you need a lot of groundbreaking test solutions to solve all of these challenges. There's higher frequency communications, the millimeter wave communication that Vice President Jun talked about. There's massive MIMO technology. There is, for this quality of service, we have to take better advantage of the spectrum. Lots of technical challenges have to be overcome. Just one of these will not enable 5G. All of these challenges have to be overcome. And all of these companies are looking to Keysight to provide test solutions to overcome these challenges. So as I mentioned, operators stand to gain a lot because they're not only going to help consumers, but they're going to help industries as well. So new business models for operators and new services for both the vertical industries and consumers. So this is really the new thing about 5G. So far, 562 trials or early commercializations have been conducted over the last 2 years, let's say. And these trials have spanned 40 different frequency bands, all the way going down to less than 1 gigahertz, all the way up to 44 gigahertz. So millimeter wave, RF space, the traditional sub-6 gigahertz frequencies, all of these bands have been tested and trialed on. The other piece that's helping is the standards are starting to settle. 2 years ago, first time Release 15 was introduced in December 2017, and then Release 15 SA, a version of 5G, was introduced in June of 2018. So we see there have been many revisions on top of that, and standards are beginning to settle, which helps commercialization, which helps the industry converge on one version and then move it forward. Also, regulatory agencies and governments are very pro 5G. I mean, everybody might have seen what's going on in the US. Clearly, Korea is very pro wireless, and all of the governments in the different countries are removing hurdles. For example, FCC in the US is making a lot of spectrum available. Band allocations happened in Japan last week. In Korea, it happened earlier last year. So all of these bands are getting opened up to support 5G deployments. Of course, there's a lot of technical complexity that needs to be overcome, and this is where we come into play. The two versions of 5G, the non-standalone version and the standalone version, they're progressing in parallel. 5G means more bands and at higher frequencies. Those bring in some new challenges. But these challenges can be overcome. We have a lot of solutions that can help the wireless industry overcome these challenges. And it's only because of that you now see a wave of early 5G devices roll out. So some proof points of where the industry is headed and that 5G is becoming a reality. We have 200 operators in 83 countries that are very aggressively investing in 5G. Qualcomm, this was the gentleman who spoke at the summit a couple of hours ago, talked about the Qualcomm ecosystem, 18 lots of device makers and operators. Qualcomm has enabled those device makers and operators to launch the first wave of 5G devices. Now, we spoke about how standards are maturing. It's not just maturing, the future versions of the standards are also being put in place. Release 15 is almost frozen. Release 16 has been defined, and the freeze date for Release 16 has also been set in March 2020. Release 17 is going to be defined by the end of the year. So you see that it's getting very structured and regular. So this is helping 5G become real. And finally, about the technical complexity, there are many band combinations that have to be tested. If you look at 4G technology, your maximum frequency was something like 3.8 gigahertz. So you didn't have to do any cellular transmission above that. You look at 5G, it's going to go beyond that, and then there's millimeter wave bands to look at. There are about 2,108 band combinations that have to be tested in 5G. And you have to deal with millimeter wave communications. So meaning things like beamforming, how you acquire a beam, how you transmit a beam from the base station to the mobile and back, how you maintain that. All of these are challenges that need to be overcome. So we offer the industry solutions that would allow them to test their designs in support of these technologies. And the key thing is, it's not that these problems are not solvable, but the industry needs to invest now. They cannot wait until everything is perfect. They have to test, prototype, deploy, learn from that experience, and then repeat, iterate. This is how the industry is progressing. This is very different from how 4G and the previous generations of wireless happened. Here's a picture of where the global deployments are. You can see all the different operators in the different geographies across the globe, covering the whole spectrum. You look at this, no spectrum is left untouched. So there's activity every from less than 1 gigahertz all the way up to 44 gigahertz. There is no area that's too difficult to achieve or or is out of bounds, right? So there's pretty much coverage across the whole spectrum. This means that from a solution point of view, from a technology point of view, we have to cover the whole spectrum. This is where the depth and breadth of Keysight comes into play, covering this whole spectrum. Launches are getting ready, and launches are being timed with significant events like the Rugby World Cup. Japan's going to do some trials ahead of that. Clearly, Pyeongchang Olympics last year was a milestone for Korea. And there's China National Day that's coming up on October 1st. So China is getting ready for trials there. So across the globe, operators and governments are very, very committed to making these launches happen. They may not be perfect, but this is how the industry can progress this technology, learn, and refine. So let me shift gears a little bit into the key technologies that enable 5G, and then we'll talk about how Keysight helps solve each of these technical challenges. So very dense modulation schemes, meaning how much information can be packed into a symbol, and how much can you transmit. 5G is all about higher data rates. It's one of the big applications. So dense modulation schemes like 1024 WAM has to be supported. We talked about wider bandwidth, and with LTE, you just have to deal with 20 megahertz of contiguous bandwidth chunk. In 5G, it's 5 times as much, and that's basic. 100 megahertz is the basic, but then the standard already talks about 200 megahertz and 400 megahertz. So you need to have wide bandwidth solutions. MIMO, to deal with all types of interference and real-world conditions. The difference here is because of propagation at millimeter wave frequencies, MIMO becomes even more challenging because it's very directional. Millimeter wave propagation is very directional. The radio waves don't travel in all directions. It's not omnipresent. Millimeter wave communication is very directional. So that poses a lot of challenge. The antenna design that goes into both base stations as well as mobiles have to be based on this phased array antenna methodology, and it has to be modeled and designed into handsets because that's the phased array antenna technology is what allows you to combine the power of all of the antenna elements and help you shoot that millimeter wave beam to overcome path losses at higher frequencies. So those challenges have to be overcome. And finally, 5G is not just about making really better smartphones. It's a 5G smartphone obviously will be great, but it's not just about the smartphone. It's about the whole network. Network slicing is one of the key concepts of 5G that provides these dedicated quality of service to multiple vertical industries, like the automotive industry. If you want to have extremely low latency to enable applications like autonomous driving, the network has to be tailored to help that particular use case. And you need the whole network to respond. And we'll talk about one of the alliances that Keysight participates in, a solution that we have enabled to help with that type of approach. So this picture might help illustrate how we play in the whole communications network. First aspect, you see a base station shooting a signal to the phone. So what needs to happen here? We need to have test solutions to design and manufacture base stations, and test solutions to design and manufacture mobiles. So we provide that. Next, the communication between the base station and the mobile happens not in an ideal environment. It happens in a very non-ideal environment. It might be in mountains, it might be in metropolitan areas, which means that the signals are bouncing around in multiple directions before it reaches the mobile. So what we call channel modeling. The real world channel has to be modeled and emulated. So we provide solutions for that. And this is where you have to do the testing without connecting the mobile and the base station with a cable. You have to do the testing over the air. So you have to shoot a wireless signal, and you have to see what happens to the mobile, and you have to make measurements. And this is how our customers do the testing in 5G because of the beamforming complexity and millimeter wave technology complexity. So we provide solutions for that. Then it's not just about the wireless network. You also have to worry about the core network. This is where the data centers are. This is what an operator's backend looks like. SKT or KT, they will have these big servers. So what you need to do is emulate a lot of mobiles hitting that network with a lot of traffic. So what if 1,000 or 2,000 phones make big data calls all the time? What happens to that network? How does it behave? So that's what we provide with our UE emulation solutions. It's not only that, the whole network has to be tested. Every individual aspect of the network has to be tested, but the whole network also has to be tested. You have to test for things like security, because security is not just to prevent hacking and malware and things like that, but 5G is about supporting many vertical industries, healthcare, transportation, and finance sector. So security is very key to these vertical industries, so we need to provide solutions for that. Finally, we call this concept cross-domain validation. There's the whole network protocol stack, layer 1 through layer 7. So what happens at the application layer, the layer 7, has to reflect at the lower layers. So if I want to make a video call and I want 8K resolution, that means physically the signal at the lower levels needs to reflect that demand. So how do you get those types of insights? So layer by layer resolution of what's going on. These are solutions that our customers are looking for. And finally, we have a lot of data, testing data, other things that are gathered by customers because there's so much to test. And you cannot manually process this. You have to use a different type of approach. So this is where cloud technologies come into play. And we can play a role in storing the data in the cloud, helping with automation, and also providing some analytics. We can provide customers an idea of this is what your testing results show, and here's how you can benefit. This is the key insight. So those are things that we provide. So we cover this whole space, which is what we capture here. What enables Keysight to cover this whole space? You know, we cover this whole commercial communication ecosystem. Chipsets, modems and chipsets goes into devices, and the devices are deployed on a network, and then all of the data goes into the back end, into the core network. So we were, a few years ago, primarily focused on offering solutions in the layer 1, layer 2 space. But with some key acquisitions we did, Ixia, Anite, AT4 Wireless, we acquired a lot of expertise in protocol covering the whole network stack, layer 1 through layer 7. And because of that, we're able to offer a broad portfolio of solutions to the market, which has enabled progression of 5G in the wireless industry. Another big part of our role is, of course, our partnership with key industry leaders, but we participate in 3GPP very heavily. 3GPP, as you might all know, is the governing body for wireless standards. And Keysight is the leading contributor in terms of 5G in 3GPP. We introduced many new test methodologies to overcome some of the challenges that I spoke about. the compact antenna test range, this method to do measurements over the air was introduced by Keysight and has been adopted by the standard. We now call that IFF, indirect far field. That's how it's known in the standard, but this is a concept that was introduced by Keysight. We also participate in many consortiums like GCF and PTCRB, the certification and validation bodies. Even as recently as last week, in the meeting at GCF, we were recognized with the leadership in AUTF test case validation as well as protocol test case validation. And you need leadership in these domains to enable device makers and chipset makers validate their device and then say they're ready for deployment. I spoke about how network slicing creates opportunities for interoperability. So network slicing is this concept where you provide dedicated service to these vertical industries. So what needs to happen is between the wireless network and the core network, there's that bridge. That bridge is where the two technologies have to connect. And there's a lot of innovation that's going on right now to enable a 5G network to be agile, to be flexible end-to-end. So ORAN stands for Operator Radio Access Network. This is a new alliance that's being created to ensure interoperability. If the rules are not, if there isn't a common protocol and a way to interoperate, then the 5G network will lack flexibility. So what we're participating in this consortium, and we created the first white box solution demonstration, and we presented that at Mobile World Congress 2 months ago. And this was done in partnership with Xilinx, AT&T operator in the US, Ball Aerospace, and Anoki Wave. They're some of the millimeter wave component makers. There will be other operators and device makers joining this alliance to support this interoperability. So we're playing a leading role there from a test methodology standpoint. A couple of examples of how we've enabled key market leaders. Korea is all about wireless. We've engaged with many key leaders in Korea, Samsung, SK Telecom. We have MOUs with KT to further the ambitions of 5G with these players. We've enabled Qualcomm, we've enabled other key operators and device makers like NTT Docomo and so forth. So we're very proud and honored to be working with the market leaders to enable their 5G goals. So one point I want to highlight on this slide, our journey on 5G started about 5 years ago. And we just don't work with the Samsungs and SK Telecoms or Qualcomms, but we work with those players, but also universities, research labs, standard bodies, consortiums, because 5G is going to require the entire world, the entire community to solve some of these problems. For example, one of our university collaborations, we sponsored studies on millimeter wave propagation characteristics. So we could identify what happens when millimeter wave hits wood surface or a glass surface or concrete. Based on those studies, we can develop real life channel models, which then the industry can use to simulate what will happen in real life. But they can model that and simulate that in their lab. So this is how we make it cost effective and easy for our customers and the industry to learn and advance 5G. Here's a chart that shows all of the world first or industry first solutions that we've launched for 5G. It started in 2015 with our 5G channel sounding solution. In February of 2017 at Mobile World Congress, we demonstrated the first 5G with Samsung at Mobile World Congress 2017. So at that time, we didn't have the 5G standard. It was called the pre-5G standard. It was organized by a task force known as 5GTF. So our participation in 5GTF, 5G task force, helped us exercise all of the technology required for 5G. So when the actual release 15 of 5G came along, it was easy for us to enable the industry and keep pace with the standards. So based on that, we have launched many firsts. We launched the first 5G channel emulation solution, the base station manufacturing solution, and the first 5G virtual drive test solution as well. And it's been about maybe more than 12 5G first solutions in partnership with the market leaders in the industry. I'll close with this slide and then we can open up for questions. Our approach to 5G is very different. Jun talked about our history starting with the garage. We've traditionally been a product-focused company, but with 5G, we've made a shift to focus on our customers' workflow. What do our customers do? There are many, many departments in our customers. All of those departments have to work together to make something happen. So we look at that whole workflow and see what's the best solution we can provide that covers the whole workflow. Because that's what our customers need. When multiple departments coordinate, if they don't have a seamless approach, you could get into quality issues. You could discover problems very late. You could have inefficiencies in your development. So those are the problems that we try to help our customers with. What does a seamless approach, workflow-based approach look like? And to facilitate that, we launched our software platform called Pathway. Pathway is a software platform that we've launched to connect the workflow across the departments of our customers. Because of this, we can provide automation, we can provide data management, we can pass information from one stage of our customer's activity stream to another stage. We can provide analytics, what's going on, what's working, what's not working, that type of insights to our customers. And this is one of the key enablers in terms of our approach to 5G. So with that, I want to thank all of you for your time, and I know Jun and I will be here to take some questions later. Thank you very much.